Welcome to the Altered Call podcast. Today I want to discuss how your environment plays a role in the health of your family. How do we build a home that leads to thriving? My name is Alex Pillischafske. I believe in freedom over safety. I believe that the world needs dads, and I believe that you were uniquely created to reflect God's glory in the world. Recapping the framework. As Christians, we are meant to bring glory to God generally through our purpose and specifically through our various callings. The enemy wants to prevent this by forcing us to stumble in any of an infinite number of ways. Stewardship is the application of our current knowledge and ability to defend our lives against that enemy. The discipleship path is an optional framework that you can use to build and maintain standards that relate to self, family, vocation, and church. This is meant to create a baseline of stewardship from which we can explore specific callings of God. We will start by establishing minimum standards strong enough to ensure that we are being faithful and on which we can build our desired lives. We will maintain these standards until we are given a specific calling of God, which we will prioritize accordingly. For a family to thrive, each person's individual needs must be addressed, but that simply lays the groundwork for what comes next. A cohesive family, one with relational trust and where healthy interdependence can thrive, must be nurtured into existence. Good things don't simply happen, but must be knowingly cultivated. By creating healthy routines and by tending to the structure and utility of your home, you are able to create fertile ground on which your family can thrive. I was talking through some of my ideas for this episode with my wife, and she asked why I didn't specifically address physical safety in addressing other concerns regarding the environment. I responded by saying that's generally the first thing that men think about, and sometimes the only thing that we think about. We find so much fulfillment and reward in our role as provider that it can be tempting to lean into that at the expense of our role as a leader. A provider ensures that everyone has enough resources. Money, clothes, food, entertainment, while a leader concerns himself with the overall well-being of those under his wing. How is everyone relating to each other? Are we growing in our faith? Does my family trust me enough to be vulnerable when life gets hard? If the goal is to keep everyone alive until the kids are adults, then that is simply a more advanced form of cohabitation, and your influence over your children will be passing at best. While your kids want their physical needs met along the way, what every child really needs is a loving father who is willing to lead them sacrificially into the future. Let's start with family cohesion. The single biggest threat here is boredom. Now you might be thinking, yeah, we need to do more fun things together. Quite the opposite. Without cultivating a baseline of boredom within your routines, no one will ever be forced outside of their own bubble. If children are always entertained, particularly at an individual level, then they have no incentive to playfully interact with their siblings or proactively seek interaction with their parents. You can always attempt to mandate this, but that tempts them to view it as a chore instead of something that they are actively seeking out for their own benefit. Growing up, summers in my house were brutal. TV wasn't really a thing. We would usually run out of library books halfway through the week, and eventually we would all be bored out of our minds. As soon as that happened, we would all solve the problem in the same way. You start by slowly wandering around the house, trying to figure out what everybody else is doing. Then you attempt to determine if better options exist, like playing outside or going to a friend's. Then you would go around negotiating with each of your siblings to see if the two of you could agree on anything mutually beneficial. And finally, if all else failed, you went to mom for a solution. In modern times, this process has streamlined into get bored, plug into a device, the end. I think that culturally we have done our children a massive disservice, both by attempting to keep them constantly entertained and by giving them devices in the face of that boredom. Worse yet, sometimes we can be tempted to offer them screens when they might otherwise be perfectly happy without them. Now, I am one of the world's biggest hypocrites when it comes to screen time. At my best, I am very good at being present and playful around my kids, but at my worst, I can be distracted and distant for days on end. This is a hypocrisy that I am slowly dealing with in my own life, but one that I refuse to allow to infect my children. When my son was 3, we had our TV on the main floor of our home, and every day he would beg for screen time accordingly. This led to us routinely giving in to the request. Eventually, it dawned on us that he only kept asking for screen time because he knew it was an option. Several months later, we moved our TV into the basement where he could no longer see it, and eventually his request to watch vanished. He still knows that the TV exists, and we still allow him to watch it, but without the routine presence of the device, he has stopped seeking it first. We also used to proactively offer movies to the kids on nights where we felt tired or lazy, but slowly over time we've stopped doing this as well. If they want to negotiate for it, fine, but we will rarely present it as Plan A because we know that they will always pick it, and we would prefer to give them the opportunity to be bored and entertain themselves. One of the ideas that I try to be most aware of when I'm navigating my home is the idea of making good things easy to do. If you want something to happen more often, then you need to create space and opportunity for that thing to happen. If you want your child to play with a certain toy or sibling, then there needs to be time for that thing to happen, and it needs to be made appealing to do so. When we moved our TV to the basement, we reorganized our living room with 2 sitting chairs for adults to read and a bunch of toys for our young kids to play with. This created a space where, in theory, all 4 of us could coexist. Is that usually how it works? No, but we still end up with 2 or 3 of us being very comfortable in that room on a daily basis. Along those same lines, if you want to prioritize family dinners, it would help if the table was clean, dinner was planned in advance, and all schedules created sufficient room to facilitate the encounter. Good things don't happen by accident, and how strongly you believe that something should happen doesn't magically reshape the world such that it will. As the leader of your family, you are required to plan for and sacrifice towards the good things that you want your family to indulge in. Once we have created room for the good, we need to start weeding out the bad. When is your family most stressed? Can you predict with certainty that soccer practice will trigger a meltdown, or that getting ready for church will result in a screaming match? Why is that? Healthy adults have the capacity to speak their needs and to pursue appropriate remedies, but often this is a skill that eludes our children. As a present and aware leader of your home, you have the opportunity to speak incredible life into your children by seeing problems and threats that they themselves don't fully understand. I remember the first time that we sent my son to preschool for a full day. Every afternoon, I would pick him up and he would scream at me for no reason. For the first couple of weeks, I got defensive and mad, threatening to stop sending him if he was going to act this way. But eventually, my wife and I were able to figure it out. After speaking with one of her friends, my wife hypothesized that our son was simply hungry. We started experimenting with putting more food in his lunch, eventually doubling it in size, and when I picked him up, I made sure that I had a snack in hand ready to go, and gave him the opportunity to sit and eat before we attempted to leave. Like magic, he turned back into the sweet and loving boy that I once knew. He obviously didn't know what was wrong, only that he felt terrible. And honestly, it took a while for us to figure it out on our end, but we saw a change that we didn't like, and we took seriously the business of correcting it. Children are particularly susceptible to their environment. Increases in stress or decreases in valuable resources like food, sleep, and attention can cause massive shifts in their behavior and outlook. If you pay enough attention to the environment on their behalf, then you have a tremendous opportunity to ward off threats to their well-being. Unfortunately, if you look to the environment and still can't find the problem, then it's time to start looking in the mirror. Children absorb every emotion in their vicinity. If you are overly stressed, sad, or depressed, they will begin to take on those characteristics. It doesn't matter how hard you try to hide it or how deep you try to bury it, their little bodies will know. Now, I'm not saying this so that you can feel guilty about being in a bad place, but to encourage you to get out of that place in a healthy way. Short-term stress builds character. If you're going through a tough season and it's about to end, then just put your head down and get to the other side. Everyone will survive. But a systemic failure to address your own needs will eventually impact your children. It also doesn't help to lie to them. If you are going through a hard time, let your kids know. Now, they don't need to feel the full weight of the situation, but age appropriately give them a glimpse of what is causing this change in you. Be vulnerable. Tell them that you are sad or scared and allow them to feel those emotions with you. Many parents, in attempting to protect their children from negativity, pretend as if all is well. This puts the negative emotions into the body of the child while at the same time denying the existence of a cause for those emotions. This gaslighting, intentional or unintentional, makes the child feel crazy because they know that something is happening, but they are denied the empowerment of knowing what to do about it. This denial of reality also perpetuates the standard that dads are invincible. I have met many men that have idolized how strong and stable they perceived their fathers to be, and placed unbearable pressure on themselves accordingly. I am fortunate in many ways that my dad died when I was young. I get to live with the superhero image of him in my head forever. But I recently surpassed him in age, and upon reflection, I realized something very important. He was an idiot. Not a bad man and not dumb, but he certainly wasn't the invincible Superman that I thought he was when he was still alive. As I was eventually able to compare myself in real time to my memories of him, I started to see in myself some of the same flaws and inclinations that were only hinted at in my childhood. These realizations have allowed me to knock down the impossible standard that I once believed and have grace with myself accordingly. Expose your flaws to your family. Let them know that you struggle, and show them how you deal with those struggles. The last thing that I want to cover in this episode is faith. If you want your kids to grow up Christian, then you have to show them what that looks like. Prayer, Bible study, worship, church, these are all things that you need to teach. You might not feel qualified, but you are the only one that can do it. If you opt out as spiritual leader in the home, then your wife may attempt to rise to the occasion, but this doesn't solve the problem. I saw a stat one time that said when a woman converts to Christianity, her household converts about 20% of the time. When a man converts, it's over 90%. I'm not going to attempt to explain why this is the case, but men are clearly the answer when it comes to the faith of our children. Questioning whether you are qualified undermines the point. You are the single most impactful person for the job. Will you do it or not? Pray with your kids. Pray for your kids. Read them your favorite parts of the Bible. Attend church together. Listen to worship music together. Discuss beliefs. Entertain their challenging questions. In other words, show them how to live out their faith. Not certainty, but faith. You don't need answers for faith. Faith is admitting that you are incapable of understanding fully and choosing to follow anyway. This is an excuse to revel in your ignorance, but allows you to say, I don't know, and then demonstrate how faith behaves in the face of that uncertainty. If you want to understand what your children believe, then ask them. I have worked with kids my entire life, and I promise you that they are full of beliefs. Now, for young children, those beliefs will be weak and poorly defined. My 4-year-old believes wholeheartedly that meteorites are a major threat to her existence, which is silly, but it exposes that she is rightly beginning to understand how big and scary the outside world can be. Now, I can just dismiss it and say meteorites aren't an issue, or I can speak into the bigger underlying fear, which allows me to influence how she sees the world and her place in it. By the time your children turn into teenagers, they have all kinds of theories regarding politics and religion, and they actively seek feedback from peers and adults as they try to shape the various beliefs that they will carry into adulthood. Speak into these directly as much as you can, but also make sure that these children are surrounded by voices that you trust, such that they will be well equipped to face the world when they leave. Accepting reality. It's much easier to keep everyone alive than to create a stable and healthy environment that enables them to thrive. Setting a standard in this area is incredibly difficult as the landscape is ever changing. Find consistent ways to pour into your family. but know that this baseline consistency is only enough to get you to the starting line. From there, you need to remain attentive and connected such that you can respond to changes in real time. The encouragement that I will offer is this. It is much easier for a child to remain on a healthy path than it is to get them there. Once you put in the hard work on the front end, equip them with the skills that they need, and cultivate an environment that is designed to encourage the good, it will be much easier to maintain. Being a provider is a sacred role. It is important, but being a strong leader is something else entirely. Taking on this additional responsibility allows men to become a living example of who God is and how He loves. When this role is taken seriously, you get the opportunity to breathe life into your home and to secure the faith of your children. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Altered Call Podcast. Before you go, I want to make you aware of our new YouTube page. There I will post a weekly update where I discuss the most recent episode of the podcast in more detail and tease information that is coming in future episodes. Feel free to like and subscribe here, there, and everywhere if you find value exploring these ideas. You can reach me by email using alex@alteredcall.com, or you can visit the website for additional information.